Hello guys, welcome back. Episode number 2 of this lit tutorial. In this episode, I have decided to extend my book card component, the simple component that we created in the previous episode, using some reactive properties. So the goal of this episode is to first understand how to define reactive properties in lit components, how we can pass data into our components via attributes and properties, and of course, how we can render dynamic content using the templating system inside of lit. Let's talk about the properties and attributes. So properties. Properties are JavaScript fields on your component class. So you can define some fields in the class that you create for your component. And then attributes are the HTML attributes that you can set when you are using your web component. So what lit does, do you remember in the previous episode I said that lit does the heavy lifting for you? This is one example. So lit automatically reflects attributes to properties and vice versa when you configure your component, when you create reactive properties inside of your component. So when a property changes, what lit does is that it re-renders that component efficiently based on the changes you have made to the values inside of your properties. So this is similar to the concept of, for example, props inside of React, but more declarative and tightly integrated into web components. Now let's create some reactive properties inside of our book card component that we created in the previous episode and see how we can pass some values to those properties using HTML attributes. So we're going to use the at property decorator using lit, and then we're going to define some properties like, for example, title and author, and then we're going to use those properties inside of the render method. We're going to render the values inside of these two properties, and then we're going to allow attributes on our book card to initialize these properties. So let me show you. Right now, the book card doesn't have any reactive properties. So it's showing some hard-coded values, but we want to make our component, our web component, flexible, reusable. So we need to create some reactive properties, and then when we are going to use that component here, we need to pass those values to those properties using HTML attributes. So for example, we're going to be able to say title is going to be, I don't know, like clean code. Of course, this doesn't work now. And then author is going to be Robert Martin, for example. Robert C. Martin. This doesn't work now. The reason is that our book card component doesn't expose any reactive properties, but we're going to change that. So let me get rid of this and get back to the notes. So we're going to update the book card component. Let's go through the update again. As you can see, I'm importing property from lit decorators, right? And then here I am creating some reactive properties using that decorator. I'm specifying the type of the properties. I am specifying the name, and I am specifying some default values. And then inside of my template, I am accessing those values using this templating syntax. $, curly braces, this, and then the name of the reactive property. And then from the outside of this web component, I will be able to pass some values to these reactive properties, as I said, from the outside. So let me go ahead and update my component with this new change. So what I am going to do is to import lit element and HTML and CSS. From lit, I am going to import custom element and property to define the reactive properties. I am going to create my element, exporting a class called book card. So this is a class that extends lit element. Let me create the card class styles. I want a box shadow and the max width and max height. the font family as well. I don't want the max height now. Let's set some styles for the H3 and then the paragraph tag. Now, here are the reactive properties that add flexibility and reusability to our web component. The first one is of type string. The name is title. The default value is untitled book. The second one is of type string again. Name author. Default value unknown author. And then the template. So the HTML template is going to read the values inside of those reactive properties and render them dynamically. And we're done. So as you can see, when we are invoking the new version of bookcard component without specifying the values, right, inside of index.html, default values are shown. Now let me get to the code, to the note one more time. So we already talked about the explanation. I'm going to skip these, but you can of course pause the video to go through the explanation if you want. Now I'm going to show you how we can actually use this. So when we are invoking the book, title, the book card component here, right? Let me refresh this because I have made a change here, by the way. So update book card, explanation, usage. So when we are importing the book card component, when we are invoking the book card component, we have these, HTML attributes that we can set. And as I said, lit maps these HTML attributes to those reactive properties inside of your web component. And you see the flexibility and reusability that our component has now using these reactive properties. Now with the application running, you should see two cards, right? So let's do this. Inside of HTML of my index HTML, I'm going to remove this altogether, and then I'm going to invoke book card twice and set the titles and the authors. To Kill a Mockingbird, and we're done. You can see that we've got two book card components, the title of the book and the author. Now, recap. How to define reactive properties in lit components. We talked about this. And we saw how lit, links HTML attributes to components and their properties, and how to render dynamic data inside of your component templates. And we're done with this episode. Again, if you enjoyed watching it, please give it a like, share it with a friend. If you have anything to say, just leave a comment and join me in the next video as well.